Of the many different races and civilizations that have come to exist within the cosmos as we see them today, there are a few that can hold a candle to the level of power and influence that has been achieved on the part of one particular race, the Chozo. Not only have they left critical evidence and resources behind that are open use by anyone that can get a hold of them and find themselves compatible with, but they have also managed to spread their culture and civilization across vast swaths of the known universe, and it's hard to go to any major galaxy that they haven't left some trace of their presence in, whether it be actual colonies or just recorded evidence of intelligent civilizations meeting with them in the past. However, there's an interesting split here as to whether or not that may be a good thing, for while the human race is most familiar with these entities as peacekeepers, there were still some that, both in past and present, saw themselves enacted as a warrior race, using their advanced technology and natural biology together in order to conquer worlds for the sake of spreading dominance wherever they chose to tread. While the many different weapon and mobility systems left behind by them offer a great deal of power on their own, the core piece of tech that truly defines the Chozo is the Chozo Power Suit, a specialty armor that combines both organic and inorganic components to create a powerful armored suit whose capabilities stretch far beyond what most would possibly expect from such a tool. And yet, for a race that has managed to forge some of the most powerful weapons in the cosmos, the question to ask here is why these suits are so prominent and such a key component to the warrior aspect of the Chozo race. Why were they made in the first place? How does the most basic model spread outwards into different iterations with their own unique combat attributes? And what connects them from the Chozo to every other being that dares to try and step into such an armor suit? Today, we here at Space Pirate Science Team are going to examine this and much more as we take this special presentation to explain the origin of the Chozo Power Suit, the unique capabilities that make these armored suits so different from similar types made by other races, and how the legacy and existence of this one piece of equipment has left such an important mark on the greater cosmos as a whole. Before we can get into all of that, however, we first need to take a moment to briefly go over the race responsible for creating them to see where the need for them came from in the first place. It is still a mystery as to where the bird-like Chozo actually originated from, but for the record, their lineage spans tens of thousands of years, even if the origin point of their kind outside the first settlement on Zebes is unknown even to them. What is at least known, however, is that the Chozo as a whole were once an extremely proud warrior race with some of, if not the most advanced technology to be created by any race. In the earliest times, the Chozo were incredible fighters gifted with physical and mental abilities that far outshined those of their contemporaries. In fact, while they likely started off as a single secular race of Chozo, over time they would diverge into many different subspecies, each gifted with special anatomical gifts that can allow them to perform feats that are amazing to even think about to this day, like jumping incredible heights, running near the speed of sound, and even rolling themselves up into small balls. Though the actual point of this morph ball form initially is still not entirely understood. While they may indeed have eventually separated into multiple tribes from a unified one originally, the two most prominent known being the Thoa and Makan tribes, they were still all united together under a common banner of respect and honor. It is even believed that all Chozo once had wings that allow them to fly just as birds on Earth would, a trait retained by some members of the Makan tribe over time, and a combination with the power at least one subspecies had to breathe underwater. There was no type of environment that the Chozo could not claim victory on. The warriors of the race were among, if not the greatest to ever exist, blending a sense of technological prowess with their advanced senses and reflexes, as well as a heavy dose of aromatic herbs often carried around by them in a skin pouch, slung onto their backs, and attached to a breathing apparatus on their face to invigorate them in battle. There truly was no equal to them in the universe at the peak of their existence. But as with all warrior races, the Chozo's end was inevitable, though not by the forces of others. The Chozo were gifted with incredible longevity, easily being able to survive for several centuries and beyond, and this proved to actually be a huge problem for them. As the Chozo aged, their reproductive abilities declined, and with too many older Chozo and not enough younger ones to keep their lineage going, the Chozo experienced a large drop in the population numbers. At the same time, they were experiencing problems with their technology, as they hit a point where the technology could no longer advance, a ceiling bounded by the very laws of reality. The Chozo knew that they could not continue to live as a warrior race with these kinds of problems, so instead of dissolving, a substantial portion of them gave up the code of the warrior and took up the banner of peace instead. Forming the Thoa tribe and other potential unknown tribes, these Chozo went from one of the fiercest groups in the universe to the greatest peacekeepers of their time, and it is in the societal state that the human race first came into contact with them. The events that would take place next in the history form the timeline that we are all aware of and are a part of, from the multiple colonies they would end up forming in other worlds, to the fall of their kind on said worlds from a variety of factors, phase-on space pirates and their own kind alike, but none of these events could have transpired, and the Chozo likely could never have become such a powerful and well-known race if it were not for the one piece of equipment that they are now synonymous with, and once again the actual focus of our research here, the Chozo Power Suit, originally designed and created by the Chozo known as Drin sometime in the distant past. Now, to be quite fair, armored power suits are not exactly anything new to those that have traveled the cosmos and have encountered advanced races, as the concept itself is simply an armored combat suit that is powered by some sort of force in order to give it unique attributes that could potentially go beyond simply acting as a defensive shield. This can mean that it might be outfitted with energy shielding, life support systems, mobility enhancers, weapons, etc., but in general, it goes above and beyond and can be tailored by different races to match their own technological, militaristic, and social needs. As such, they are a common fixture of galactic society, serving as a way to enable the exploration of otherwise dangerous locations that could prove to be too much for others to handle biologically. So you may be wondering then, if these are a rather common fixture, what exactly makes the Chozo line of powered suits so unique and distinct? Not just from the base model, but any alterations to variants that can be produced to go beyond the standard base model. And once more, beyond the combat attributes that are inherent in their existence, what makes them so vital and important in the actual culture of the Chozo. We'll break down where we are going with this to answer the questions posed here and earlier, starting with a basic breakdown of the standard components and attributes of the base model for the Chozo Power Suit. While typical armor suits tend to have multiple layers that work together as a single unit, in almost all cases, these different layers are either entirely artificial in structure, much like the armor suits worn by the different branches of the Galactic Federation military, or they're almost entirely organic and constitute a second skin or exoskeleton of a sort, as is commonly seen with many different types of space pirates. The Chozo Power Suit differs from these extremes because it is a unique mixture of both, a hallmark feature seen in many of the artificial creations of the Chozo, including the standard Chozo statue and the Torizo. The basic structure of the suit possesses 3 different layers, each with its own distinct purpose. The lowest layer is the Zero Suit, and while aesthetically an entirely separate suit on its own for some, especially those developed for species other than the Chozo, it is still counted here as its presence is required in order for the other 2 layers to be applied. The next layer is a semi-organic layer that is flexible and enables the wearer to move their entire body without any serious limitations. In essence, it is the musculature of the power suit, and it bonds with the muscles of the wielder when active to amplify the overall strength and capacity to move any and all equipment attached to the armor suit. This flexible layer is not only the main piece the final layer connects to, but it is also the most important layer of them all, as this layer is further directly connected to the nervous system of the wearer and is responsible for enabling them to activate and deactivate the suit at any time. The final layer of armor is a semi-flexible metallic outer shell that sits on the very top and serves as the main conduit that takes the energy tank storage that powers the Zero Suit and projects it as an energy shield that acts as a defensive module for the armor suit as a whole. As the wearer takes damage, the energy shield absorbs the impact of the blow and redistributes it around the wearer to reduce its damage concentration, though doing so reduces the amount of energy the suit has available to sustain the shield. Once the energy is gone, the suit will be unable to maintain its form and will dematerialize, leaving the wearer completely exposed. Now, with all of this said, what's truly important to make totally clear here is that these power suits behave incredibly differently compared to anything else that could really be compared to them because of the semi-organic layer inside of it that isn't made of solid materials, as with normal Federation-style armor suits, nor does it solely act as an extension of the individual wearing it, even if it does physically and mentally bond with its wearer. And that right there is the key. Bonded. It is not merely an organic addition as seen in Space Pirates. The Chozo Power Suit is, for all intents and purposes, alive. It is its own separate pseudo-organism that bonds with its wearer and acts as an extension of the will and physical body, and yet it can perform important biological functions completely independent of the wearer's own body. Take the Hunter's fusion suit as an example. When her power suit had to be forcefully removed from her, Federation doctors essentially did what they could to not just save the Hunter's life, but also that middle semi-organic layer because of how intimately connected it was to her mind and body. They stretched it over and melded it with the hunter physically, essentially fusing them together and, in turn, creating the fusion suit. However, by the time she arrived on ZDR and her power suit had finally been separated from her actual body, the actual musculature of that middle layer, and in turn many of the metallic components of the suit's outermost layer, had begun to naturally repair themselves with no input from the hunter's own body. It was literally regenerating, recovering and reforming itself back into the legendary Chozo Power Suit as it had once been. The biological aspect of this type of power suit is even reflected in the ex-infected Chozo warriors that the hunter encountered on ZDR. As while they would maintain a normal form to some degree in battle, if they were severely damaged, the parasite itself would mutate and deform the neck and head of these copies in a gruesome fashion, and in a way that would be impossible to do if there wasn't some sort of semi-organic component to it that unified the suit with its wearer. It is further noted that the suit itself is not just a physical piece of equipment, as it would not be the same if it were not for the software that helps to run the suit. The Chozo Power Suit possesses its own computer database that can act to maintain information on the suit's weapons, defensive attributes, movement upgrades, life support system, which are extremely valuable for surviving in the depths of space or in water, a heads-up display, and the ability to store numerous data files on the flora, fauna, and structures of other planets, with further data being gathered through the use of combat and scan visor technology. The suit is further able to hack into the data systems of other races to gather information and even interact with those of foreign languages through an equipped translator module, though there are some limitations on its abilities, as hacking-resistant technology and advanced script like the three-dimensional language of the Luminoth are impenetrable without modifications, and there are some worlds that are just so far beyond the knowledge of the Chozo that created the technology that they may not be known to the suit's databanks. Even so, this allows the wearer to communicate with others and even their ship readily and ensure that they are never without some information to work with against an opponent in battle. Lastly, it is known that the suit is able to generate map layouts of an area using a thermal positioner to create a mini-map for an area, which can be extremely important in not only exploring a location when external map data cannot be downloaded, but also for enabling the main interface module software of the suit to run a hint system, which provides the wearer with helpful information towards what locations are worth examining next if they are lost, based on information collected independently by the system on the overall energy readings of a larger environment as a whole. Now that we have established the basic features that define the existence of the Chozo Power Suit, let's now examine the unique features of the different types of basic models and what sort of purpose they fulfill for those that have access to them. The most basic of all types of Chozo Power Suits are those worn by Chozo soldiers, and these suits are really about as basic as it gets. While they contain the three layers previously noted and are able to amplify the overall basic physical attributes of the possessor, they are otherwise incredibly bare bones in their construction. They do a good job of protecting the wearer and can offer extremely useful degrees of flexibility that enhance the physical attributes of the wearer instead of the heavy metal holding them back, but that's really about all these basic armor suits can do. It is possible they might have some features like the high jump boots installed into them, but it is more likely the physical prowess that soldiers demonstrate in battle with agility and maneuverability are a part of the wearer's natural physical skills and do not count as an upgrade of any sort. Moreover, the suits themselves offer nothing more than defensive benefits, as the standard Chozo soldier attacks with a long-armed spear of some sort for combat, and in the case of elite Chozo soldiers, can be combined with a durable handheld shield to make it more difficult for opponents to penetrate the defenses and damage them directly. While these different types of standard and elite power suits come in different colors as a sign of both the overall durability and the military rank, as a whole, they are incredibly simple and are mass-produced for them in this state. This does provide a bit of a strange juxtaposition, however, because most of the data that is readily available on this tech is limited to the hunter, and her suit is incredibly complex compared to the space model, and compared to many others by Chozo standards. The question to ask here then is why the basic power suit for Chozo soldiers and the like is so bare bones in the first place. There are two likely answers for why this is the case. The simplest answer is that more advanced Chozo power suits have incredible combat and exploratory attributes because they are deemed to only be fit to be worn by the strongest and most trusted of combatants, making the more advanced armor suits a sign of both power and skill, but also prestige from both a social and militaristic perspective. those with the more advanced armor suits have either proven themselves in battle enough to be worthy of something more advanced, or otherwise have been specially selected to wield them for more social causes, as was the case for the Hunter. The other answer, which is almost certainly the case as well, is that more advanced iterations are a lot harder to produce, and given that there are incredible disparities between the Hunter's old armor and that of Ravenbeak, the former leader of the Chozo Makan tribe, someone we'll be touching on in more detail in time, it can be seen that even more advanced iterations have their incredible differences as well. The Hunter's own original suit was designed specifically by Mother Brain in order to give her a level of accessibility in her suit's modular functions that went far above the norm, and the power suit she acquired in Chozodia on Zebes was treated as a sacred relic by the Chozo stationed there, giving it both incredible combative and religious significance. Despite this, the standard power suits worn by Chozo soldiers are still noteworthy for what they can do to aid them in battle, and thus still deserve a level of respect for their craftsmanship. Beyond the limitations of the most basic of armor suits, however, we can then examine models that are known to be able to improve upon it, and it is here that we see basic models that are not fixed, but actually modular in function. Instead of being stuck with a basic set of defensive attributes, we can see Chozo Power Suits that have the capacity to be upgraded. In other words, while these suits had the same basic defensive attributes as the most basic of iterations, they also have the capacity to feature specific types of weapon, mobility, and armor attributes inserted and integrated into them fully to mostly permanently affix the attributes and functions of said upgrades into their systems. These models are incredibly rare, and thus there isn't a great deal of information available on them, but as noted before, we can at least look to the Hunter's own original power suit as a prime example of what this entailed. As has been observed, the Hunter's power suit was, and is able, to take optional upgrades that she might find and integrate them fully into her suit, both physically and from a software perspective, and thus can improve upon itself and grow stronger and more powerful as more and more upgrades are acquired and integrated into the suit. This allows her to increase the effectiveness of her power suit over time to make the most of it, and while it seems to be a habit of hers to have many of these upgrades removed over time after she manages to complete major missions, reflective of the Thoa tribe's stance that power is only deserved and warranted when the danger requires it to save others, it nonetheless is a feature that makes her stand out from all others in more ways than one. And speaking on that, one of the most important differences between these sorts of models and everything below is the addition of a very important and particular weapon system, the arm cannon. While power suits can indeed amplify the physical might of their wearer, and thus allow them to attack with forceful strikes like the melee counter, the arm cannon is typically mounted to the dominant hand of the possessor, and can allow them to use energy-based and ballistic weaponry to attack and deal damage to targets not only from a distance, but with far more power than they might otherwise deal with physical blows alone. Just like with the rest of the power suit, this weapon system generally only starts out as a basic weapon, the standard power beam, which, while only being able to generate small bursts of damaging light energy, can be fired rapidly and serves as a useful weapon for taking out small threats that might otherwise be risky to attack at close range. However, as a part of these advanced Chozo power suits, it too is modular in function, and thus can be upgraded and added to in order to increase the versatility of the weapon system all on its own. While the simple addition might seem like it wouldn't make much of a difference, with increased power and other special capabilities, it can often prove to be a better weapon to rely on than just physical blows. As for why this is the case, that is currently uncertain, but it is likely tied to a sense of responsibility, just as basic armor suit variants are, as the weapons that can be used to upgrade the arm cannon can make it a terrifying and lethal weapon, and thus can only be trusted with those that have proven to be both effective in combat and compliant and respectful of the ways of the Chozo. As great as the suit's modular capabilities are, however, they are not entirely perfect, and different models of power suits demonstrate different levels of versatility depending on the tech at hand. While the presence of limitations regarding just what sort of upgrades can be used on a suit makes sense in the lowest of ranks among the Chozo, this is a bit more perplexing when one is looking at the power suits that are reserved for the greatest warriors within their race. Even the leader of the Makan tribe, Ravenbeak, had a suit that could seemingly be equipped with a specific number of upgrades, with other power suits demonstrating two major issues with compatibility as well. The first issue is that, while these suits are normally able to integrate fully with any type of Chozo designed upgrade, there are some compatibility issues with extremely old ancient Chozo artifacts, like the Plasma Beam, Gravity Suit, and Space Jump upgrades. Given the rarity of their existence, it is thought that basic armor suits are unable to process and use the full power of these upgrades on purpose. In the case of the Hunter in particular, the original power suit she was given by Mother Brain, while unique in its versatility and capacity to seemingly be able to integrate a seemingly infinite number of upgrades, was not compatible with these sorts of ancient Chozo upgrades on its own. It's not entirely understood why this is ever the case, but it is likely that the existence of these upgrades was kept from Mother Brain under the fear of the power they could give to anyone that could use or otherwise reverse engineer them, and given that the maniacal AI would eventually betray the Chozo and lead the space pirates, that fear was more than justified. The same issue can be demonstrated to a degree in regards to alien technology, as while the basic power suit can interact with and be integrated with anything of Chozo design, it is much more finicky in many cases when it comes to the technology and combat upgrades built by races other than the Chozo. In these situations, the tech normally would not be able to integrate itself into the systems without some sort of drawback. In many cases, this falls then to having limited ammunition for these sorts of alien weapons, and in turn could potentially hamper the possessor's capacity to freely use any alien tech for their own purposes. The Hunter is an exception to this, with her own current power suit, which we will cover in just a moment, but aside from this, these suits can, at the very least, seemingly integrate themselves to at least some degree, and this degree of at least partial compatibility is most likely a consequence of the Chozo meeting many different civilizations in their journeys across the stars, a testament to their shared history as both fighters and peacekeepers, spreading their technology and themselves across the cosmos in the name of collaboration and fostering connections with developing civilizations. And now, speaking on upgrades, another note to add here on the power suit are the major differences between variant models of the armor suit. By variant in this instance, we mean how different types of power suits have unique modifications to them that make them stand out from the norm, and the most obvious example that can be spoken of here once more is the legendary power suit, designed by the original Chozo progenitor race, or so we believe, and found by the Hunter within Chozodia on planet Zebes after she crash-landed on the planet following an attempted escape after Mother Brain's initial destruction. This powerful variant of the Chozo power armor she had been given by Mother Brain still has the diverse modular attributes that are seen in advanced basic models, but it has one attribute to it that stood out strongly. This armor suit had the capacity to essentially incorporate and integrate seemingly almost any sort of alien technology with little issue, even if the wielder of said suit might not know how the tech would affect the wearer at all. This in turn includes not only the oldest and most powerful of upgrades made by the Chozo in the past, but also in turn those built and designed by other intelligent races, even if they never make contact with the Chozo or even humans for that matter. To say the least, this makes the legendary Chozo Power Suit an artifact of incredible importance, and in the wrong hands, it could be a terrifying force all on its own. But luckily, it seems that only a single person could have ever truly inherited its power, and the reason why will be covered here later on. In addition to this, as also noted, Ravenbeak had his own unique variant of the standard Chozo Power Suit. Though in his case, his suit had been heavily modified based on both the standard power suit of his tribe and aspects of the legendary power suit, even coming with an ornate headdress that seems to be purely cosmetic in nature, something that was added by Ravenbeak himself as a way to intimidate and demonstrate a sense of power to others. His variant was similar to the legendary power suit in that it had the capacity to integrate not just one but multiple different upgrades, once again against the norm, and he proved to be able to use that to make the most of some of his preferred Chozo upgrades. However, it went beyond this, as the upgrade attachments to it seemed to exist as amplified iterations of what the Hunter could otherwise yield normally, including the Hyper Beam that was otherwise only accessible to the Hunter and Mother Brain. On the one hand, the advanced combat powers of the suit and its upgrades were superior to the legendary power suit, as they rendered Ravenbeak a stronger user of these upgrades, but at the same time, it was unable to fully mimic the legendary power suit's extremely advanced integration hardware and software, limiting what sorts of weapons and other useful upgrades Ravenbeak himself could utilize in battle. As such, it is clear that his iteration was likely made by him personally in an attempt to imitate the legendary power suit, though not something that could actually match its seemingly ultimate potential. Lastly, in talking about variants, it is important to note here the capacity for power suit variants to be able to alter and transform the power suit itself as a whole in order to expand its overall functions and attributes. Just as with the additional upgrades that could be integrated into a suit and its arm cannon if present, it is possible for the very fabric of multiple layers of a power suit to be altered directly in order to modify it in its capacity to handle different environments, bolster its defensive shielding, and even add additional powers and quirks that may not have ever been integrated into the suit at a base level. We mentioned this type of variant as a separate example because these special upgrades don't just affect one or two parts of the physical suit, but affect all the layers and thus change both its mechanical and semi-organic components directly. These can range from relatively basic variants like the Varia and Gravity suits to more advanced and unique variants like the Dark and Light suits. Basic power suits can even be directly altered through surgery or reconstruction, such as in the case of the Fusion and PED suits, respectively, with most of the changes occurring directly to the middle semi-organic layer of the suit before its total effects are integrated fully into the other two layers. Now that we have come this far in our investigation of power suits and the technology and race behind their conception, there is one final thing that deserves to be covered here, and that is the story and legend that lay behind the creation and usage of the legendary power suit. This powerful relic is wholly unique compared to every other model of the power suit known to exist because of its capacity to seamlessly interface with almost any known type of upgrade that it possibly could gain access to, as already noted. And it is thought that it may have been that first ever created by the Chozo Drin, though its true origins are still not entirely understood. What still can be said though is that its design was modeled after the Chozo god of war, or goddess for that matter, as we're not entirely sure on that specific point. This relic is said to be the most revered and advanced of all armor suits ever developed by the Chozo, and is only supposed to be accessible to the greatest of all Chozo warriors, a gift that can only be granted to those that prove themselves to be worthy of its power through the Ruins test in Chozodia, prior to the destruction of planet Zebes by the Hunter. As noted already, this special armor suit was held in the possession of the Thoa tribe, though again it was the ancient progenitor sect of the Chozo that actually created it, along with most of the upgrades that a standard Chozo Power Suit could be compatible with. And while it is not exactly known why it was left with the peaceful sect of the Chozo, who had sole possession and access to it, this was likely done to keep this armor suit and associated upgrades out of the hands of any Chozo that would aim to use them for irrational militaristic purposes, a direct violation of the core principles and beliefs of the Chozo as a whole. And that brings us once more to the one man who not only rejected these principles, but sought to change them and ultimately end up as a scourge of the Chozo, Ravenbeak, the leader of the Makan Chozo tribe. The full backstory of Ravenbeak is not currently known, and given that he and his tribe, along with their homeworld of planet ZDR, are now gone completely, it is unlikely that much more could be found from what is available to know. But what is known is that he was one of the most powerful Chozo warriors to ever live, and as the leader of the Makan tribe, his combat skills and prowess were truly unmatched among the Chozo, and feared by many as a result of this. While the Thoa tribe chose to put away the ways of old and live in communion and peace with nature and other intelligent civilizations, Ravenbeak remained a power-hungry and controlling figure that still saw the Chozo as a race of conquerors, and would do anything he could to assert the dominance of his clan and his kind wherever he would travel in the cosmos, alongside the massive number of his own personal troops. When others looked for peace, he brought war. When others would bring union, he would divide and conquer. When others wished to share and assimilate, he would steal and dominate. Every aspect of him seemed to stand in stark defiance to the ways and ideals of the Thoa, and while for a time he put up with this, it is believed that he eventually came to loathe the Thoa tribe, seeing them as weaklings that could never stand up to the ways of old and hold their heads high proudly as true Chozo. He eventually came to despise his own race, and after a certain event would take place, it seems that he felt that there was no choice but to rebel against the rest of the Chozo. When the Thoa tribe from planet SR-388 would call for Ravenbeak's assistance in containing and destroying the mutated Metroids on that world, instead of truly helping them, Ravenbeak would order his tribe to attack and kill nearly the entire Chozo population of the planet, and at the same time on Zebes, he would choose to not assist the Chozo there as Mother Brain turned on her creators. It is even thought that the specialty weapon system the space pirates used to bypass Zebes' defensive shielding, a weapon that could generate black holes, was something that Ravenbeak had helped to design along with the Hyper Beam, as both weapon systems were available to him as part of his modified power suit. Going against his own race like this seems like an incredibly drastic action even for a military leader like Ravenbeak, so one has to ponder just what exactly happened to swing his thoughts of conquest to one side so harshly as to allow the eradication of a massive sect of his own kind, and why are we even talking about him here? Well, therein lay where we started this chapter, the legendary Power Suit. As the hunter explored the deepest reaches of Zebes during the events of a Zero mission, in addition to the standard Chozo statues that she would find holding special upgrades for her suit that were compatible with it, she would come across 3 extremely ancient statues that greatly resembled the members of the Makan tribe as opposed to the Thoa, and in their hands were 3 ancient and powerful upgrades her power suit was incapable of fully assimilating. It was only with the acquisition of the legendary power suit that she was able to use them to the fullest. If this is the case, then it suggests that these upgrades, the Plasma Beam, Space Jump, and Gravity Suit, may have originally been of Makan design in older times. In turn, it would suggest that the legendary power suit was something that a leader like Ravenbeak would seemingly be an easy shoo-in for possessing and using on his own. And yet, despite that, his specialty power suit is one that again is just heavily modified from a basic armor suit. Powerful, yes, and able to handle different weapon and mobility systems, even to an advanced degree, but once more, still lacking the versatility of the hunter's own situation. The legendary power suit would easily be something he would have wanted for the sheer versatility and power it possessed. So why did he not have it? The answer is quite simple, because the best and clearest explanation is that he failed the Ruins test. This obviously must seem more than a bit preposterous. How in the world could Ravenbeak, one of the most powerful Chozo warriors to likely ever live, fail a test for the most powerful power suit ever made? Even from the little data that we have, it is clear that the test itself wasn't entirely that difficult, and he could have easily handled it. At least on paper. However, it is now believed that the physical test in question was really a combat ruse at best. In truth, the actions and minds of those who stepped into the presence of that test were what really decided the fate of those that dared to take it on. The Thoa tribe retained ownership of this powerful suit and most known Chozo upgrades because they understood that such power was to only be in the hands of those worthy of it, and by that it is inferred that they and the Ruins test itself would only give their power to those that fought not for themselves or for the sake of war, but for the sake of peace and unity. The greatest of ideals for the Chozo of all tribes is that power was to only be given to those that would use it to spread safety and peace, a power that can only be wielded by those that sought to use it to better the universe and unite it under a shared banner of cultural melding and prosperity. Ravenbeak's lust for power is what made him unworthy, possibly being one of, if not a key contributing factor to why he eventually chose to rebel against those outside of his tribe. As far as he was concerned, it didn't matter anymore. If the Thoa and the Ruins test would not give him what he sought, then he would let it all fall into ruin on Zebes and elsewhere. And that is where we come to the final note of this outlook, because while he was never able to gain the legendary power suit, someone else was able to prove themselves worthy for this incredible suit. And of course, that was the hunter. This may not have been a total coincidence though, or even a mystery to Ravenbeak himself, for his blood was used to enhance the woman's combat prowess and develop into the bounty hunter we know today. We can only imagine that he must have learned at some point or another about her passing the Ruins test and acquiring the legendary power suit, what he had coveted for ages because of his denial towards him. His obsession with power just put him too far out for the god of war or goddess of war to choose him, but the hunter sought to fight only to protect the galaxy from evil threats like the space pirates, and by default fit the criteria for a truly great warrior among the Chozo as a whole. Learning that the hunter had been the one to take it may have stoked both jealousy and disgust from him, unable to understand why he had failed, and yet a creature far weaker than him had somehow succeeded. We bring this to attention here at the end to show a final dichotomy that lay in the culture of the guardians of power suits. On the one hand, the Makan, under Ravenbeak, sought power and power alone in conquest, using both their natural physical attributes and those granted by equipped weapon systems to attack others with whatever could be outfitted onto them. On the other hand, the Thoa, the Peacekeepers, saw this power as one that was to be used to defend others, to protect the weaker and less fortunate in order to keep not just the Chozo safe, but all life in general. It is an incredible feat that this sort of power could ever be encapsulated with the essence of thought from the true progenitor sect of the Chozo in just a single suit. But that is indeed what the legendary Power Suit did and still does, the perfect reflection of all sides of the Chozo. The Hunter now being the only entity in the known universe able to harness the true and full potential of this race and then some. I must admit, while the existence of powered armor suits may be something that is taken for granted these days, in this dive it's become very apparent that there is much to the lore and functions of these devices, and it is nigh impossible to separate their legacy from that of the Chozo that first designed and created them. Even if they may all be gone now, or at least as far as the Galactic Federation and space pirates know, these power suits are a legacy of theirs that likely will keep going into the unknown future, aided by the Hunter, the last of their kind in both spirit and blood. Though there may still be mysteries within these devices and their creation that the Chozo sadly took to their graves, it is nonetheless an honor to be able to study the relics they have left behind, and how those with the right equipment and know-how can still put them to use, and show just how much the legacy will be perpetuated, even through something as seemingly simple as a suit of armor. Thank you all for watching this video. We here at Space Pirate Science Team take our work very seriously, and we genuinely wish to be as informative as possible when it comes to the work we conduct here, for both ourselves and in the name of science. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment to help us get greater recognition out there to inform the greater populace of the universe as a whole. Also, feel free to keep track of us through Twitter, as we'll be posting notices there every time something new is submitted for your viewing pleasure. We hope to see you all in the next video, no matter what world it may take us to.